I'm Teresa Mangum. I'm the director of the Obermann Center for Advanced Studies at the university, and we're a center that supports research faculty and staff research and especially collaborative work. And we also have several programs for graduate students. And one of our programs is this informal Get It Done series, and on various topics. And if there are skills or topics you want to know about, you are welcome to recommend to us ideas that we could take up in the future. But I'm delighted today that Mary Blackwood, who I have worked with frequently on my own grants and who has saved me from many, many serious mistakes and misjudgments, I can honestly say, is here with us today. Mary is going to go over some basics about grant applications, but she welcomes your questions, and I'll kind of watch the chat. But also feel free to use the hand raising faculty, facility. It's a little challenging when we've got a lot of people who are not on the immediate screen. So you might just say in chat, call on me, or speak right up, and then we'll have time at the end for questions. So thank you all for being here. It's great to see you. And Mary, I'll let you take over.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that, Teresa, and for having me at the Get It Done series. Again, my name is Mary Blackwood. I've been in the Division of Sponsored Programs for about 14 years now, and I've actually worked with granting information for decades, actually, at large public universities. So I know a certain amount about it. I have read hundreds, if not thousands, of grants. I've actually written grants for others, sometimes for projects I was doing or for a festival that I was running. I have been turned down for grants. I have been awarded grants. I've been on grant review committees. I have attended webinars and conferences about grant writing. And after all of that, what I can say is that there's no one perfect way to write a grant. You just have to pick up clues on the way as to what's going to help you give you that extra bit that will help you to get a successful grant application out the door that will get funded. So I'm going to see if I can help you with some tips that might be something you can use. And by the way, always feel free to contact me at DSP. My contact information is at the end of this slide presentation. And I'm happy to try to talk to you about whatever I know, or put you in touch with somebody who can help you. What I want to cover here is basically a kind of a life cycle of a funded project. Some of these will be very brief: searching for a funding opportunity, a bit about what sponsors are, how to read an RFP, and then writing the proposal, which is the tricky part, obviously. And the idea I've come up with that really helps me is altering your perspective when you write that proposal to give the grant reviewer what they want to see. And there's always the issue of persuasion, the trickiest question of all: how do I persuade a sponsor to fund my project? So a funded project is something where you're going to apply to a grant opportunity. And if you start in the upper right, the plan project item, it can easily take 8 months between when you start to plan a project and when you actually apply for funding. In the meantime, you have to kind of come up with your idea, maybe do some preliminary research, gather together your colleagues who might help, or collaborators. You have to find an appropriate opportunity. And when you finally do put that application together and it gets received by the sponsor, it can be many months again before you learn whether or not you got funded. So the grant review team that most sponsors put together it's a group of people from outside the sponsor, experts in the field, but sometimes not experts. Sometimes the sponsor itself will do some of the reviewing, especially for a smaller grant. But also the sponsor's employees are going to probably do the first run through of looking at the grant applications that come in to see if the person who's applying is eligible, because they're looking for a way to toss something off the stack and into the discard pile, because their grant review team is going to have so many applications to look at. Literally, some federal agencies can take a year to get back to you. If you get the award, then you need to manage it too. And that is not just doing the project, but spending the money appropriately and reporting on that. And a really important part of any funded project, never forget, is that you're going to share the results. You have created that project for an audience, and you need to disseminate it. So always keep that in mind. It's pretty obvious in a way that you're doing it for that reason, but it never hurts to keep reminding yourself that that's the point that you're reaching towards at all times. Now, so the first thing you want to do is find a funding opportunity. This is the DSP homepage, and you can see the red arrows point to the grant bulletin and to the Find Funding tab. Both of them kind of take you to the same place, but this is the grant bulletin that is put together by one of our employees, Oliva Smith. And she has a master's in library information and science, and she has her fingers in so many databases that she can find all sorts of opportunities. She brings them together and puts them in the grant bulletin for UI faculty, staff, and students to find a funding opportunity that they can apply to. You can search these yourself. You can search by discipline. You can search by your own keywords. But another thing you can do is you can ask Oliva Smith to help you with this. Oliva loves hearing about people's projects and what they're seeking grant funding for. And if you reach out to her at any time, just feel free to do that. She'll tell you what she needs, and then she can do a deep search and see if she can find a unique funding opportunity that really matches what you're doing. Never hesitate to reach out to Oliva. She loves talking to people. Oliva and I also frequently give talks together. She does the part about the grant seeking or the funding seeking, and I do the part about writing the proposal. This is one of her slides. She says time is money and suggests that you have an annual schedule. If you're going to have a career in academia or maybe in a an organization that provides arts events for people, you're going to need to apply for grants, right? So make yourself an annual calendar and put the different opportunities on it. And then you can kind of back out from each one how much time you need to do to put together your grant elements, to reach out to colleagues who are going to help you, to reach out to collaborators you might need, to have somebody help you prepare a budget, et cetera. Also, maybe you just missed a great opportunity. It closed a month ago. You can put it on the calendar a year from now or 11 months from now, because most of those are going to be annual things. You can even look at the previous, the grant instructions to kind of get yourself ready for the next time the opportunity opens. You always need to read the current opportunity instructions, but you can get a start by looking at the old ones because they may not have changed that much. Another thing to do is to go to sponsor websites that really fit what you're doing, sign up for their newsletters, okay? You might get a hint from that about a cool opportunity that suddenly comes up. A lot of these sponsors have webinars out there. There are conferences on grant writing. In fact, UI brings in some of these, and keep an eye out for that too, so that you can go to those conferences. That every little thing you do can give you another step forward in getting a grant. So, grants aren't charity. This is very important. The sponsor is making an investment. The sponsor will give money because they want to invest in the project you're coming up with, and they're investing in you as a person who can complete that project. And they want to use your completed project to burnish their reputation because it's really great for their publicity. A sponsor can let the world know, this is what we're doing for people. Look at this wonderful project that we funded. They can go back to their donor base and say, look at this project. Your money made this happen. If you give us more, we can fund more projects like this. And even for state and federal agencies, which are taxpayer funded, they can take a completed project and go back to the public and say, this is what your money funded. It's something that's making your lives better. So they're investing in you. Don't think of it as like, oh, they're they're pitying you because you need somebody to do a project. They're excited to see what you can do for them. There are pretty much three kinds of sponsors: government, industry, corporate, and foundations. Each one of them can have different pros and cons. Obviously, the federal government gives out bigger awards on the whole. And by the way, one thing I did not mention earlier when I was talking about myself is that my focus in DSP is on arts and humanities. However, I also focus on nonprofit foundations and some miscellaneous federal, like the National Endowment for the Humanities, Mellon Foundation, it would be another, Iowa Arts Council, all sorts of foundations. But in spite of that, I also do a lot of science grants. So while I'm focusing on talking about arts and humanities here, this applies also for science grants. I mean, I'm the person who looks out for American Heart Association grants and reviews those as well. So the government grants, yeah, they often give a lot more money, but they can have really high competition. Now, if you look at the nonprofit sector, there are thousands of foundations, okay? Some of them are bigger, like the American Heart Association, but some of them are really small. Like there might be a person who had a very devastating disease, and the family had money to create a foundation, and they want researchers to study that disease so other people won't go through what their family member went through. And it can be hard for them to get publicity for that because there's so many of them. And this is, again, why you go to Leva Smith, because she can help you find one that maybe is perfect for you. So these small foundations will often have less competition because they're not as well known. Usually they are not looking for a grant a proposal that's quite as onerous as something from a government agency. Now, industry also is looking to make themselves look good with the public by funding projects. But really, in the end, they're doing it for a profit because they might want a really wonderful investigator at the University of Iowa to do some research about a medication that they have or are trying to develop. And in the end, the drug company wants to sell that drug. And the drug company also often wants to own intellectual property. And this is why it's always important to have a place like DSP. There's always a division of sponsored programs, however it's named, at institutions all across the country. And what they will do is they will look out for your intellectual property rights. They'll look out for your academic freedom rights. So that's why we like you to route something through DSP so that we can help you. Now, continuing on, how to read a request for proposals. I do want to say, first of all, that an earlier Get It Done session was done by Christy Fitzpatrick. She's the director of the Grant Support Office for class. And she did a really wonderful presentation in this series, and it's available online. You can still watch it. She digs very deeply into how to read that request for proposals to give yourself the best chance possible of writing the grant that'll get awarded. But I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it here because it's such an important part of any grant writing. I just threw out three different current opportunities to show a kind of a difference between them. The National Endowment for the Humanities currently has the Humanities Initiatives award going out or opportunity going out. You can ask for anywhere from $6,000 to $150,000. Now the RFP is 28 pages long, full of detail. If you go instead to the New England Foundation for the Arts, you'll find that their online RFP, if you print it as PDF, is no more than 10 pages. They're giving out less money too, but it can be an easier grant to write. I would also say, do not read only the request for proposals. It's extremely helpful to go to the sponsor's website and find their mission statement. If you read the mission statement, you can see if your project will fit into that. I consider that extremely important. Know what they're looking for. And I'm just making sure I didn't miss one. Okay, so here is, for example, the National Endowment for the Humanities. They have, this is great. They have information for first-time applicants. I cut and pasted only a little bit of it here, okay? You can, I think this is a live link in the slide, but you can go and find their whole information on this topic. But notice where they say NEH's mission is they support research in humanities, they nurture the humanities infrastructure, and they expand the reach of humanities to all Americans. That is what they are for. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to write a grant that will do a project that's good for all Americans or reaches all Americans. What they mean is they want to make sure all Americans have access to the humanities. But you might target what you're doing to a smaller subset of Americans. For example, maybe Americans with disabilities who have a harder time participating in humanities events. NEH is very interested in making sure that every sort of American is going to have, and that every American is going to have access. So it could be also something targeted towards Native Americans. Whatever you're doing, think about who your audience is when your project is done. But again, they are looking to support or to provide humanities to Americans. They do fund scholarly work, which might be targeted to just scholars in your field, but they also fund popular work, a museum exhibition. Another thing that NEH will let you do, and it's far from the only sponsor that'll do this, is that you can talk to an actual program officer. A few months ahead of a grant opportunity opening, you can try reaching out, and if you can talk to a program officer and say, here's my idea, this is what I want to do a project for, and I'm looking at your opportunity that's going to open in 3 months. Do you think that my project fits with this? They will have a chat with you, maybe give you some ideas about how to target it more towards the opportunity. And there are a lot of sponsors that will do this. They're excited to see what you've got for them, and they want to make it to give you a chance to get an award. So here's the first thing you want to look at. Are you eligible to apply for an award? This one, notice it says its programs are for U.S. accredited public or 501c3 private institutions of higher education. UI falls into that. We are a U.S. accredited public institution of higher education. We are not a 501c3, but we are a public institution. Notice at the bottom where it says individuals, foreign, and for-profit entities are not eligible to apply. Okay, that tells you right there. As an individual, you can't apply for this particular opportunity. You have to apply as part of an institution, the University of Iowa. Now, you would be the project director or the PI, the principal investigator, but you can't just be working as an individual humanities scholar and apply for this particular one. What you really don't want to have happen is to not notice these things, send this in to the sponsor, and then have it administratively defined by the staff before it ever gets to a grant reviewer. So just bear that in mind. Very important would be, first of all, I was going to say, here's more of NEH's eligibility. They have tons of information, and you need to read all of it, just make sure. I might also add that if you're not sure about reading one of these things, just ask somebody at DSP, ask me, or just call the main number and say, can somebody talk to me about the NEH guidelines? I don't quite get them. I'm here to help you interpret them. So never hesitate. Now, the program description is very important too. Programmatic relevance is really critical. You can come up with the greatest project in the world, but if it doesn't fit into their program, the sponsor is going to send you on your way and wish you good luck in finding another sponsor. This one says, for example, projects will be organized around a core topic drawn from areas of study in the humanities. Notice that they say NEH welcomes applications for projects that are modest in scope, duration, and budget. Remember, this one, you can get as little as $6,000 for it. So they're not only looking for gigantic things, they're looking for small things too. Even small things can have an impact. They really care about how you spend their money. They're going to give you some money. They want to know that you spend it properly, that you spend it appropriately, that you monitor it as you do that. That's why Grant Accounting Office watches all our grants and follows the budgets. In terms of NEH, they follow the federal cost principles, which are, for example, is it reasonable? the budget item. Is it allocable? Is it allowable? This is another thing that our budget people at DSP can help make sure applies to your budget. A lot of smaller sponsors will have a much simpler information about the budget. They might say, you can use this budget to buy supplies and travel and pay somebody to do a bit of research. They might say you can't use it to support your own salary, or you can't use it for food and beverages. So they'll be pretty simple. Just follow their guidelines. Just to talk a bit more about other things that are involved with budgets, is you've probably heard of indirect costs or overhead, currently called facilities and administrative costs. Every funded project needs more than the money that comes from the sponsor to get the project completed. And that's where facilities and administrative costs come in. The university, which is behind you as the project director, is providing office space, lab space, electricity, internet connection, turning on the heat and the air conditioning. These are real costs, and the sponsor's not paying for them. Now, the university does try to recoup some of this through the facilities and administrative costs. So every 2 years, the university negotiates with the Department of Health and Human Services, which is our biggest funder, to decide what our F&A rate will be. And our full F&A rate for research work is 54.5%. That means if somebody in the Cancer Center applies to the National Cancer Institute for a $100,000 grant, that they'll get that $100,000 and they will also get $54,500, which goes to the university to pay for overhead. If it's a private funder and they have a published policy that says they will not pay indirects, we accept that. If they say they will pay 10%, we will accept that. If they do not publish a rate, then we ask for 15% F&A. Another thing is cost sharing. Basically, every project is going to have something cost shared. Part of it's possibly the unrecovered indirect costs. But also it might be your salary, your effort. Most sponsors do not require cost sharing, but when it is required, you can figure out what things can be cost shared. Often it's effort of yourself and maybe staff. But there can be other things that get cost shared. Again, DSP can help you with that. The other thing I was saying in this is don't pad your budget. They're going to know. Put down the expenses or the costs you need to make your project happen. And also be ready to justify absolutely everything. A lot of sponsors have very detailed required formats. This again is NEH. They expect you to double space your pages with 1-inch margins and a font size no smaller than 12 points or 12 point. You might think this is kind of a little silly to go that far. Who cares? Everybody's heard of the person who submitted a grant application and did everything against the regulations or didn't follow the guidelines, but they got funded. Well, I'll tell you this, that does happen, but it's extremely rare. And you don't want to take a chance of getting it that way. The fact is that people at the sponsor have all spent a lot of time creating the request for proposals. They've thought about what they want to fund. They've thought about the elements they want to see in a grant. So respect that process. They're going to give you money. Respect their process, give them what they are asking for. A grant can have an awful lot of different elements, but what I usually say is I'll give them everything they want. Don't give them what they haven't asked for. One thing that I might say is a bit of an exception is, for example, a timeline. If you can fit a timeline into the proposal narrative without going over the page limits, a timeline is a very easy thing for a reviewer to read. They can scan it quickly and see that you've got a really clear idea of how much time it takes to get everything done. So that can be a nice thing to put in. They may not request an actual dissemination plan, but if in your proposal you can add how you intend to disseminate your project when it's done, they understand that you know what it takes to go beyond just completing the project, that there's more to it than that you have to share your results. Your results might be, could be a music performance. Your results could be a book you've written, as well as a research paper. Oh, and for a moment, I'm just going to promote the DSP website. It has so much information on it that you can use. For example, here, the like budget preparation information, there are templates for budgets and things. And if you hunt around really hard, you can probably find some grant writing tips that were written a long time ago by, well, I shouldn't say a long time ago, but by somebody who was retired from DSP, but was here for many decades and had a huge amount of knowledge. So just go around the website and see what you can find. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. And now we get to the heart of it, writing the proposal. Okay, it's kind of tricky. I've written proposals, as I said, and read them too. And it took a while. I thought about it, and I finally thought to myself, what really matters when I'm writing something? We create things for an audience. We write a book to be read. We write a song to be heard. We choreograph a dance to be seen. We even create a meal to be tasted. So we're always thinking about the audience when we write something or create something. So when you're doing a grant, you have only one audience. This grant has no one else who's going to look at it but the grant reviewer. And if you can just really keep that in mind, write that grant proposal for the grant reviewer. Don't write it for yourself. You've already assembled all these elements. You know what you need. You're writing your proposal. Somebody's helping you with a budget. You're collecting your letters of collaboration. That's all great. Those are all elements that you need. But it's not all about you. Okay, so here you are. You're tired. You've got a lot of things to do. Maybe you're teaching classes. You might have students you're mentoring. You're writing a report about something. You don't have that much time, but you also have a great project in mind and you need some money to do it. So you're really thinking of what you need. And what I'm suggesting is you think instead about what the grant reviewer needs. So here's the grant reviewer who is doing this as part of career service. They're not getting paid to do it. And they're going to read 30 grants, maybe more. They've got a job to go back to too. By the way, I'm going to continually use they and them, even though I say the grant reviewer. It's generally a team of reviewers, but I like to think of just the individual person sometimes. That grant reviewer has a job to go back to. And in addition to all that, the grant reviewer knows that it's going to be kind of tough to choose amongst these applications because they may read 30 applications and find 12 great projects. Unfortunately, they know that the sponsor only has enough money to fund 7 of them. So they're going to have to make a really tough choice and turn down great projects. And that's not a fun thing to do either. So as I'm sitting there trying to write something, I'm thinking about what can I give the grant reviewer that they need? Stop thinking about what I need and think about what the grant reviewer needs. Let me start with the easy to review part, okay? This is where you want to make it clearly written, concisely written, error-free, follow those guidelines, avoid jargon because generalists may be reading as well as specialists, define your terminology so they don't have to think about it, make it simple for them to read. After all, yours might be the 18th one they're reading, and at this point they're getting a little, maybe a little exhausted. And if you can give them something that's simple and interesting, they're going to appreciate that. They're looking for bold, innovative ideas. They want to see you doing something interesting. They don't want me too work, but rather something that builds on what's already there. So yeah, they're definitely looking for an innovative idea. They want something that's impactful. Now, to be impactful, it doesn't have to be on the entire public, general public of the United States or wherever, or the world. The impact can be on a small number of scholars in your field. It can have a great deal of impact just because of how important it is to them as they do their work. The reach of your project is not about the numbers of people. You might, again, be doing something for scholars in your field, and they will take your work and add it with their own and work on it some more. And they may reach different groups of people from that. So in the end, your project, while it might be very targeted to a certain group or certain audience, can end up going farther. And if you can make it clear in the grant application that you're providing something that will have more reach, that's going to help. Again, make it enjoyable for them to read. And that reminds me, here's something. A lot of websites have review criteria that are available right online. NEH is great about this. A lot of sponsors do this. This happens to be the Iowa Arts Council. They've got a rubric. This is just a screenshot of part of it. There are more topics than this. And here's a story about me applying for a grant many years ago. I was applying to an Iowa Arts Council grant for a festival that I ran. And I looked at this rubric, and as I wrote the grant application, I was very careful to try to make sure I hit the top points of each category for the rubric, because the Iowa Arts Council gives this rubric to their grant reviewers. I submitted the application, and it was not funded. They did give some anonymous reviewer comments to me, and I looked through them. There was one category where I had a kind of low score, and I didn't really understand how the grant reviewer comments went along with, or meshed with the actual rubric. So I thought, okay, I'm going to call the Iowa Arts Council. I'm going to talk to a program officer. I picked up the phone and somebody answered it. Very nice. I said, hi, I'm Mary Blackwood, and I submitted the grant for X festival and didn't get funded. And I could hear some hesitancy in her voice. I think she was probably preparing herself to be, I won't use, let's see. Let's just say she was maybe expecting me to say something like, hey, my grant didn't get funded. Why not? What did that reviewer mean? That was stupid. I mean, what other projects have you got there that are better than mine? There are people who will do this. They will call grant officers and say this. That's not what I said. I said, hey, thanks, just thanks for having these funding opportunities out there and for sending the reviewer comments. Now, I don't quite understand what I could have done that would have made my grant get funded. Could we talk about that some? And could you give me some ideas? And after that, we had a wonderful conversation. We went over the reviewer comments and the rubric. And from her experience of having seen thousands of grants come through Iowa Arts Council, she was able to give me some ideas and guidelines. And every grant reviewer committee is going to be a different team, but she's seen these comments so many times, she was able to help out with that. And I resubmitted that grant in the next cycle and got the award. So resubmission is absolutely worth it. And talking to a program officer is worth it. Always be thoughtful of how much time and effort they put into giving to the public through their funding. So this is just to say that all the time as you're writing the proposal, keep asking yourself these questions. Give the reviewer a surprise. Give them a puzzle early on in the proposal, and then they'll want to know how you're going to answer it. Be direct about what you're saying. You have to have a significant project. Go ahead, just tell them how. Don't assume they think they would know how significant it is. Are you building on or challenging the work of other scholars in your field? Tell them how. Are you qualified to do the project? Do you show an ability to complete it? Now, here's an important thing. If you have an ability to show that you've got project management experience or an ability to use that, that's going to sound really good to them. Show that you know how long it takes to get something done, how hard it is to get certain things done. Have you been successful in the past? Can you just mention that with other projects? That will make them start to think, this person can get this project done. Anticipate their counter arguments. That makes it easy on you too. And here are my 5 top thoughts that I've distilled after all the years I've had in the grant business. We've talked about some of them already. You do need a great idea, but not too high risk, by the way. There are some opportunities that will be high risk opportunities. The sponsor will ask you for a high risk idea. Give them one then. Otherwise, they're looking for something that's, current in the field, but maybe taking it a step further, adding to what your field is about. But definitely give them something innovative. have that programmatic relevance, and you can even let the proposal refer back to the mission statement. Go ahead and use words from the mission statement. It's not plagiarizing. You just might use some of the buzzwords, because then the reviewer reading it will think, aha, this person gets what the sponsor's looking for. It also helps them for their publicity later, just even giving them the buzzwords in your abstract or something. And here's a really, really important one. Details are convincing, period. I mean, I've seen grants where people say something, not quite this, but, I want to cure cancer. Oh, that sounds nice. How are you going to do that? We all want to cure cancer. But if you start writing details about what you have in mind to do and how the work you do in this project will then help other scientists, for example, to work on cancer cures, eventually the sponsor or the grant reviewer will think, oh, okay, I can see where maybe this will lead somewhere. Give examples, tell why you use the ones you're using. Again, don't give them a me too. Give them something new that you're doing, but also always be aware of what's in your field, what's in the literature, what's in the background performances in the past. And then the final point is persuasion. And boy, is that a trick. How do you persuade somebody? I mean, that's what a grant proposal is all about. Can you persuade somebody to give you the money? So here's my favorite slide. I don't know who made this thing up. I found it on the web. It doesn't have a credit on it, I'm sorry to say. But it's talking about classical rhetoric with your argument as the Starship Enterprise. You need to include logos, ethos, and pathos when you're trying to convince somebody. And there's Mr. Spock. He's all about logic. He's presenting evidence. Point A goes to point B, goes to point C. You need that. Then there's Bones. And he's all about, we got to save everybody and every person counts. And I'm going to treat everybody the same way. He's all about credibility. And then, of course, there's Captain Kirk, who's pretty excitable, right? he gets really passionate about what he's doing. He's emotional, and it's okay to show some passion for what your project is going to be in your proposal. It doesn't have to be full of exclamation points, but that you write something where the passion comes through. Because if the grant reviewer thinks you have passion for it, they might think you can make it happen and get it out to your audience. So never be afraid to appeal to these, that reason, emotion, and trust. And now remember how I said the grant application has only one audience, the grant reviewer? Well, when you're writing that thing, you have only one job, and I mean only one job: get the award. Your job is not to make your project happen. That'll be later if you get the award. The grant application process has one goal, one job. That's it. Get the award. Just keep it in your head the whole time you're writing. And to do that, you have to be better than the others who are applying. And you have competition. Your competition is like you. They're smart. They're well-educated. They've got great ideas. Also, remember that the grant reviewer knows nothing about you but what's in the application. You have to make that application speak for you and convince them that you've got a wonderful project that's well worth doing, and that you can make it happen, and that you can get it out and disseminate it. You just have to convince them to fund your project. Sorry about all those other guys who have great projects. All you care about is getting the award for yourself. That's the trick. But you know what? First off, even if you don't get the award, resubmission works. If a sponsor allows resubmission, you are likely to have a much better chance of getting it on resubmission, especially if you pay attention to the reviewer comments. And even if you don't get the resubmission, it can take several grant applications before you get the first one. You might get it on the first time out, but you might not. The fact is, every time you go through another grant application process, you're getting better at it. Every time you get some reviewer comments, you're understanding more about what they're looking for. So it is so worth it. Just keep trying and keep applying. And here I'll just say information about DSP, and I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, Mary. That was really, really helpful. And this is not a substantive question, but somebody asks in chat if you would be willing to share your slides.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, we can post those or link to them on your site, whatever's easiest, and then write a note.
Yeah. What if I send them to you, Teresa, and then can you post them somewhere on the Obermann?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So for folks who are here, if you'd like the slides, or a friend of yours who's interested and couldn't come today, you can just go to the website, Obermann Center, get it done, and they'll be tucked right under Mary's, the entry for Mary, in a week or so.
Absolutely.
So do folks have questions? Feel free to just speak up. And Mary, do you want to stop sharing the screen and we can see each other? And
that was what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Does anybody have questions right off the bat?
I have a quick one.
Oh, yes.
So first of all, thanks so much for organizing this.
And I would suggest as you speak up, just introduce yourself briefly so we'll get a sense of what kind of grants you're probably applying for.
Yeah. So my name's Alex, and I'm a grad student in the geoscience department. My field of research is paleontology. And so I don't have a question so much. It's more just an area that's always been challenging for me, which is, since I work on dead things in the geologic past, it's very difficult to make my research oftentimes relevant to people today. So the broader impacts, how's this going to help people in society? That section of any grant has always been really challenging for me to, fit in with my project, whatever I'm looking for funding for. So I was just wondering if you could speak to maybe how to make your project relevant in areas like that.
Well, one of the first things I'd say is I'm fascinated by paleontology, and I'm also fascinated by current events. I think there are a lot of people out there who would find that topic really interesting. Okay. So never discount the fact that there's an audience for what you're doing, but to relate it to, and you might be wanting to do something that's current in your field. It doesn't have to be about current events. But on the other hand, can you make the argument that knowledge about our past informs how we're moving forward into the future? What has happened to organisms in the past that maybe have not survived, and how can that, tell us how to work better so that we don't kill ourselves off with global warming? Excuse me for saying that. I don't know. Does Teresa, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think one of the points you made that was a really important one is that there are grants that are designed for broad audiences, and then there are grants that are designed for you and your immediate colleagues. And I'm guessing that and this is the kind of thing that Oliva can help people find, that there are funders who really care, like you do, about paleontology and about the fossil record and the things that matter to people in your field. So that while I'm like Mary, and I would be absolutely fascinated, and when I go to museums, I go partly to see that historical record. I think that there are moments in your career where you want to write for the larger public and research for the larger public. And there are moments, especially early in your career, where you're usually more in conversation with fellow specialists. And that's when you just want to get somebody's help in finding the right grant for where you are in your career. I wouldn't feel hopeless about it at all.
Oh, not at all. There are foundations that will be really interested in that kind of thing, as well as, government agencies. Yeah, definitely. And also I do think that the history of our planet is always relevant, no matter how old it is. But you're right. You do have to think of the way to even bring it forward. But remember also how many people do love museums, how children love dinosaur bones, et cetera. Seriously, and a lot of grant reviewers have kids who probably love dinosaurs.
Thanks so much. That's very helpful.
Good.
I have thought about, one of the main ways that people in my field get funding nowadays is relating their research to the present day in climate change and extinction.
Sure.
I my PhD project, as it's currently formulated, won't really touch too much on diversity trends through time. So I've always sort of struggled to try to make that connection. But I guess I haven't really put a lot of thought into appealing, especially to people's interests in paleontology. So that's very helpful.
And if you feel like just reaching out to me separately to discuss it more, feel free, please.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much.
If I think of other ideas. Right.
Are there other questions people have, general or about your work? Well, one of the things that I'll toss in, and then I'll come back to see your question there, Eric, I'll come back to you. But Mary touched on this lightly, but one of the other things I really encourage graduate students I work with to think about is stair steps of grants, so that there are grants. For example, if you're like I am from a literature background, there are a lot of special collections libraries around the country that offer their own in-house grants to scholars to come and work there for a week or 2 months. And these are small fellowships, but they cover the cost of working in that archive. And if there is an archive around the country that has material that would serve you well, and that's a great kind of a starter grant to apply for. They're competitive, but they're far less competitive than the huge national awards. And once you have several, and there are local grants and fellowships right here on campus too, of course. And I think once you build credibility that shows if somebody invests $3,000 in you to come use their library, their special holdings, and you finish that dissertation right when you said you would, or you finished the article that you proposed to write from that work, you start to build the kind of credibility Mary was referring to, so that when you do go for the larger grants, you've got real evidence to show this person is a good investment. So I would say, don't just imagine you have to leap to those huge competitive grants, although don't overlook them. They're great dissertation grants out there. But those small ones are a great place to start too. Mary, Eric Friedman asks, let's see, does NEH fund educational research? Oh, so do any of the grants have to do with teaching and pedagogy as opposed to just research, I guess would be part of that question.
Well,
not exactly. It's research.
Well, speak up, Eric, and let us know what you had in mind.
Okay, go ahead.
So, I study how history is taught and learned in schools. There are educational funders. There's funders of educational research, but there's not many. So I'm just curious if NEH is interested in that kind of research.
And I'm trying to look over here and kind of look on their site now. They have so many different funding opportunities. I would think that would absolutely fit into what they would do. Their goal is, if you remember, to bring the humanities to all Americans, and that includes teaching, I would think. So if it's some kind of education about humanities, is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yes, I would have to look at specific opportunities out there. But my feeling from just the past and what I've gone through and seen is that, yes, they would.
That also reminds me, Mary, of places, and I don't know whether these are invitation only grants like Mini Mellon grants, but there are foundations like Teagle and the Luce Foundation that are really focused on research in education. But I don't know of those. I don't know which one, if they have open calls or if, which is another unexpected issue about grants I didn't know about until a few years ago. That's why you need to let your colleagues, your advisor, people like that know if you're interested in funding, because they might have entrees into some of these foundations that are mainly invitation only grants.
That's true. We sometimes we'll see, like Aliva, we'll see a grant opportunity, but it's invitation only. And DSP will look at it and see, can we reach out to that sponsor and ask if they will send an invitation to the University of Iowa? I mean, we're certainly willing to give that a try, and it might even work. they might add us to the list. So most grants are not invitation only, to my knowledge. But sometimes the one that you want is the one that's perfect for you. Mhm.
Other questions? We've just given you a lot to think about, I know. This is such great information that Mary provided.
And
Well,
you can send me an email separately if you think of something later. Mhm.
mhm. I was going to say, and Mary and I can hang out for a couple of minutes to see if there's somebody who would like to stick around and ask a question. But we just want to thank you all for coming today, and especially to thank Mary for sharing her incredible expertise with us. So thank you, Mary, and good luck surviving the end of the semester to everybody else. It's good to see you all today.
And thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to talk here today, and for everybody who came. I hope we can help you. Mhm.
I was just seeing, oh, you're getting lots of thanks in the chat, Mary.
That's nice. That's nice. I'm glad if it helps people. Mhm.
Hey, Mary, my name is Kaylee. I am a graduate student, and I'm currently working on a dissertation research support grant. And I just sort of wanted to ask your opinion about one of the requirements that's in the grant. It prefers that the graduate student's prospectus be defended by the time of the application, but they have an exemption of which, if you have it defended, it's due on the June 1st, but if you have it defended by August 15th, that they will consider it. And I'm just wondering, mine won't be defended until after June 1st, by the 15th. I'm just wondering, do you think that that really does put me at a disadvantage, even if I will have it by that sort of secondary 15th deadline? Yeah.
If they say that they'll accept an application as long as you have defended by August 15th, is that what it says?
Yeah, it says, yeah, I guess I could pull up the more specific language, but essentially they say they prefer it to be defended by the time of submission, but
Okay, right.
consider if basically my mentor would just have to provide a letter of support saying that my prospectus will be defended by the 15th, and then they will accept it.
Yeah, and
I just sort of read it as giving preference to people who have already.
They probably will give to those. However, if you have a wonderful proposal, and you've got the letter from your your faculty member who says it will be defended by August 15th, that might be enough to make them say, oh, this is one we want.
Okay.
I think it's still worth trying. It's worth trying. You know, and I think this year of all years, in the midst of COVID, that there will be a lot more compassion.
Okay.
No, that's true.
I hope so, because COVID did contribute to my delay in defending. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciated this workshop.
Yeah. And I think, by the way, another thing, Kaylee. Oh, if she's gone, that's okay. Are you there?
Nope, I'm still here. Yep.
I got it. Another thing is, it's just the process of applying for a grant is always good.
True.
So I'd say do it no matter what. Okay.
Okay.
Do it if you are eligible at all for the experience, if nothing else.
Yeah, that was one of my incentives to apply. I'm interested in sort of careers outside of academia, and so I think having grant writing experience would help me on that front as well. So
it will.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Good luck with that.
Thank you both so much.
You bet.
Bye.
Thank you.